Ooh, what's good? It's your girl, Squeeze Jones, aka Killer Queen T, aka Blackout T, aka I know I'm looking at my nail. Please stay over there. So I'm getting a chair and sit over here again, getting this, okay? So I ain't going nowhere today. I ain't doing nothing today. Don't tell us you ain't do nothing. Don't tell us you ain't go nowhere because that video took, you ain't upload a video till almost 9 o'clock. Well, let me explain something to y'all. That video was supposed to be up by 12. YouTube decided, hey, we're gonna fuck around and take for others. We're gonna wait for 30. The video was done, mind you, it was a whole lot of shit that was stopping me from almost making a motherfucking video. People kept calling, people kept texting. I was not feeling at my best. And I'm just like, I don't know. But so what I'm finna do is go here. Give y'all another story. Andy and Willie. That's what it's called. Super sleuths. Are they supposed to be the private detectives? Because that's what the pictures is giving us, though. The pictures is giving us from the book. Okay, let's see. Oh, got a nice little 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, nice little couple chapters. Ooh, I ain't gonna be able to give y'all at least 2 chapters here because, well, at least 2 or 3 probably. I'm like, wait a minute, where's chapter 1? Chapter 1, Willie Perkins and I get into the detective business. My name is Andy North. I am 10 years old, going 11, and I have lived all my life so far in Wakanda, Indiana. Edgar Blogger, who lives in New York City and spends his summer in Wakanda, visiting his grandfather and bragging about New York, said nobody in New York has ever even heard of Wakanda. This sounds fishy, especially since Edgar also says the New Yorkers are better informed better than anyone else. After all, wankers have all heard of New York. So, as my best friend Willie Perkins pointed out, how are New Yorkers better informed if they have never heard of Wakanda, which is a well-known town, especially around here? Edgar claims just don't hang together. However, in case by a slim chance you haven't heard of Wakanda, I'll describe it because it's where all the Willies and my adventures have happened since we went into the detective business. First of all, Wakanda is the ideal comfortable size. It has a population of 3,128, not counting 7 people I know personally who were not born in time for the census. He like, look, if we got 7 other people in this town, but technically they don't count because they was born after the census was done. So, we'll include them in the next book. We'll include those 7 people in the next book. Got it? All right, cool. Also, although Edgar is always bragging about how much more activity there is in New York City, there is a considerable amount of activity in Wakanda. Mr. McCarter, who spends most of every day sitting on a bench in front of a post office looking at the town, says so. And he says Wakanda's reputation for being an up-and-coming community dates back several hundred years. For example, according to Mr. McCarter, there was once a woman living here who scalped. And as Willie said to Edgar, how much more activity would anyone want? An interesting fact about this scalping, by the way, was that it wasn't fatal. Mr. McConnell says that if an Indian had been converted by ministries so that he didn't want to do too much damage and his victim was in good physical condition, a person could survive a scalping. Okay. You just lose some of your head, just not all of it, just a little, just a little head meat, a little hell, skim. You seen Hannibal, you know the shit is possible. You can lose a little piece of head. You can even have your head open and still be alive. Okay, so calm down. Cause oh my God, they're gonna take your kid from you. What are you thinking like that? I'm just letting you know, sweetie. If somebody kidnapped you and they wanted to eat you, and they start cutting at your brain, and you still can be saved. You might have a little scar, might be fucked up mentally, but you'll be alive. This particular woman was 5 years old at the time and in good shape. She lived to be 55 and she was bald the last 50 years. At the age of 55, she was struck by lightning. Mr. McConnell, who knows all this for a fact, told Willie and me about it to illustrate the advantage of keeping in good condition. See, y'all probably thought she scalped somebody. She was scalped when she was fast. She was scalped, so she still lived after she was just bald. See, I told you still live. Of course, this Indian activity was a long time ago, but it proves that this has been a lively place for years. Even Edgar has admitted that he had never heard of anybody being scalped in New York City. Also, after he had listened to some of Mr. Mercado's other Indian stories, Edgar even admitted that Wakanda has it all over New York when it comes to the authority on Indians. Mr. McConnell, who is so old that he has a beard clear down to the fourth button on his shirt, is a first-hand authority because when he was a boy, he himself, with his own eyes, saw Indian arrowheads by the dozens all along the creek in Adams Woods. Big Walnut Creek, which curves around the south side of town, is another good point about Wakanda. Above the bend in the creek, there is a hole which Mr. McConnell says is probably the best bottomless hole in the Middle West. And below the bend, the creek is swell for fishing and boating and swimming and snakes and turtles and almost everything in season. When Mr. McCarter was a boy, Big Walnut Creek froze solid every winter, and a person could skate on it from November to March. I asked him why the creek doesn't freeze like that every winter now, and he says it's the communists. They are affecting the atmosphere. When I told this news to my father, he told me that I was not to consider Mr. McCarter an international authority, which is peculiar since Mr. McCarter knows about as much about the communists as he does about the Indians. Anyway, this gives some idea of the town where I live. Actually, Wakanda has only one serious drawback, and that is Ronald Pritt. Ronald, who is always thinking trouble for Willie and me, oh, okay. I'm gonna splice this out. And is a creep in our class at school. Nobody likes him but teachers. Mr. McConnell says that Ronald comes from a long line of creeks. And since Ronald's father, Bernie, is one too, it's obvious that creeks run in the family. But aside from them, Wakanda is an ideal place. And it has been getting even more ideal since Willie and I got into the detective business. Willie and I became detectives last September, several weeks after school started. That way it came about was this. Miss Esther, our 5th grade teacher, was enthusiastic about having her students give speeches. And so right away, we all had to give a speech on an interesting experience during summer vacation. Hold on, y'all. I gave a talk which Miss Easter praised for 2 minutes and 57 seconds. I know this for a fact because Willie, who was quite scientific, timed her. It was the longest anyone was praised. Ronald Priestley was praised for 1 minute and 3 seconds. So Ronald, who had never been able to adjust to the fact that I can beat him at everything, was jealous. And he went around telling everyone that he was going to show me up in the second speech, which was supposed to give on what we were supposed to give on what we were going to do when we grew up. I had always planned on being a baseball player like Mickey Mantle or a football player like Johnny Eunice. But when I heard that Ronald was going to talk on being an astronaut, I realized that I had to come up with a more unusual profession. Most of the guys were planning on being athletes, even Jackie Kerr, who can't chin himself. Willie told everyone that he was going to be a genius, but he was kidding. He was really at the time planning on being a teacher, a coach that is. Well, I thought. And I couldn't figure out anything to beat an astronaut. Which, by the way, Ronald couldn't be in a million years because no one could get into a confined space with him. Then the night before the speech was due, I was watching Big City Detectives on television. And I got to thinking that private eyes had unusually interesting lives. They were always being ambushed and having knives thrown at them from dark alleys and getting guns stuck in their backs and going around corners in foreign cars on 2 wheels. They get into a lot of fights and meet a lot of interesting people. Besides that, they do good. So that's why I gave my speech on. And as it turned out, the class liked my speech better than Ronald's. It had a snappy ending. Ronald had been doing this loud, noticeable yarning all the time I talked. And so finally I said, if Ronald Pricken gets a black eye on the way home from school this afternoon, and he probably will, Ronald shut his mouth. But Miss Easter started to open her. So what I mean is it is sometimes the duty of the detective to give a black eye to the worthless person in the interest of justice. But on the other hand, it is if even a worthless person is killed, then he's worth something, and the detective goes after the criminal. So, I'm going to be a private eye to make the world a better place for the little guy as well as the big guy. Or even a creep like Ronald. He said, even a creep like Ronald. Miss Easter started to say that it was enough. But I was through, though. When the bell rang, Ronald said, Dead-eye North. The private Dead-eye. You couldn't follow a cow's trail? I winked at Willie, and Willie said, Write us a letter about it from Mars, why don't you? Right away, Willie had decided to be a detective, too. He said that finding stolen jewels was a lot better than just getting to games free, which is all that happens to a coach, besides having a whole town do on you with 5 other guys lose a baseball game. And Woody talks a lot. After we decided to study up to be detectives, he kept telling everyone what we were doing, and Ronald kept making wisecracks. And almost before we knew it, we found ourselves right in the middle of the detective business. I don't know how to feel about this. Yeah, they didn't start a new page. Saving paper in this joint. Nah, they just said we saving paper in this joint. It's not bad, okay? I'm not judging it. I'm just saying it's different. I ain't never seen it happen like that. But now I think I found that, and we're gonna appreciate it, and we're gonna apply it. Well, chapter 2, a lot of bad luck. What we were doing, which Willie kept talking about to everyone, first we went to the library and found a book on judo. If someone is waiting around the corners to stick a knife in you, you gotta be able to protect yourself. Willie's little. And after I throwing him around the rooms a few times, he got discouraged. He said until the Wheaties start taking a hold, maybe he wasn't built for the detective business. But I pointed out that he was a good size to sneak through a tight space like a transom. And so he brightened up and decided to give the judo another try. Willie got quite good at the bow and the yell, and I got good at throwing him in every direction. But finally, he quit cooperating because he said he thought I broke 1 or 2 small bones in his back. We had to quit anyway because we also broke in a vase and some other odds and ends of my mother's. And she said that she was getting in the mood for a little judo herself. Besides, my father said this was enough of this nonsense. So we took the book on judo back and found one on the FBI, which told us all about fingerprinting. But my mother said what were all the smudges on the wall in the bathroom. I explained that we were studying on our fingerprints. I told her how you had to study them and read what the book says so you'll recognize things about them and know whose they are. She said if Willie and I didn't stop leaving them around, she'd fingerprint us both. My father said he said that this was enough of this nonsense. It's hard to amount to anything when you got parents to buck all the time, but Willie and I weren't giving up. We decided to practice shadowing people. I shadowed my father a couple times and got pretty good at moving from tree to tree. I also worked on entering a room without anyone knowing I was there. But once before dinner, when I slipped into the kitchen and was keeping an eye on my mother in case she did something suspicious, I all of a sudden wondered what we were having for dinner. And when I just asked, my mother dropped a bowl of batter and had a nervous breakdown. She told my father that I kept creeping around. My father said just one more thing, and I would have the sorest bottom side. Oh my goodness. At this point, we probably have given up being detectives if it hadn't been for Ronald Pricket's wisecracks. And he had told his brother Bernie about Willie and me training for the detective business. If there's a business creep in the world than Ronald, it's Bernie. Being 15, he had 5 years more practice. Hey, eyes, he yelled at Willie and me. Put the finger on anyone yet? One time downtown, with a lot of people around, Bernie yelled at Willie. There's the great detective Dupin Perkins. Anybody been prolonged yet, Duplin? Willie said it was embarrassing to have something particular yelled like that yelled at him so everyone could hear. And Willie got so fed up they finally one day at school during recess that when Ronald was sneering around and asking when we thought we'd be hired for our first case, Willie forgot everything except getting back at Ronald. We're already working on the case, said Willie. I don't believe it, said Ronald. Who will hire you? I'm not going to tell our client's name, said Willie. It isn't ethical. You're not telling because there's nothing to tell, said Ronald. What makes you an authority, said Archie Monroe. I'm not a moron, said Ronald. Anyone who believes that Willie and Andy are really on the case is a moron. Oh, Go soak your head, said Freddie Clark. Ronald isn't what you call popular. We are, aren't we, Annie? Said Willie, who was looking sweaty. Yes, I said. I couldn't let Willie down. And we'll be paid a lot of money when we break the case. We should be any day now, said Willie. Why you have to do that? Why? It's one thing you putting us in a hole, but why you gotta be like we finna be? We getting cake? No, we can't give out any information. I said. So when Willie acted so mysterious that all the kids except Ronald believed we really won the case, after school, Willie said he almost got to believing in himself, which ought to be good for business. That evening, I was carrying home some groceries and thinking how Willie had stuck our necks out when I saw Bertie walking on his bike in front of Tony's Candy Kitchen. I almost turned and went around the block, but I didn't. Well, if it isn't Sherlock out on the case, he said when he saw me, and Watson. Sherlock, you better get out of your magnifying glass because it looks as if Watson's got a clue. I tried to see what he was looking at, and there was my dog, GC, sniffing at the sidewalk. I got out some garbage can, GC for short. He's a good little old dog, and he was minding his business, and so I got mad. I wouldn't stand for anyone calling garbage can names. His name is GC, I said. You better not call him that again. Watson, said Barney, and the guys hanging around laughed. A person can only take so much. I lowered my head and ran at Bernie and butted him in the side so hard that he lost his balance, and the handlebars on his bike slammed against the window and cracked it. So out came Mr. Anito, who was usually big and fat and friendly. Y'all just fucked his who at this point was looking big and fat and unfriendly. And he didn't say Bernie, it's his fault. He knocked me over. Accept my condolences, said Mr. Anito. Now, do you want to pay me $4, which is half the cost of glass, and leave and not come back until you learn how to behave in public? Or do you want me to tell your father all about the trouble you keep having with people who are half your size? Mr. Antonita can get tough, as everyone knows, and Bernita didn't waste any time paying and leaving. Since I sicked GC on him under my breath, Bernie didn't leave alone. All people like Bernie Purdy should always leave chased by dogs. It's called a detention to their meanness. So then Mr. Anita turned to me and said, you have to pay the other half, Andy. I'll settle it with your father. Couldn't you settle it with me? I said. You don't have to look so frightened, said Mr. Anita in a more friendly tone. I only saw the last part of what happened, but I'll tell your father that I know enough of Bernita to guess that he started the whole thing. You shouldn't go around breaking windows, though. I'm sorry Bernita hit your window, I said. If I had to do it over again, I'll try to knock him in a different direction. That isn't exactly what I had in mind, said Miss Antonita. At any rate, now you have a window to pay for. I know what I said, and I'll pay for it myself. I can pay you 30 cents now and the rest in a week. I don't like to bother my father with this. He has several other things on his mind. Mr. Antonito considered the matter for a while. Finally, he said, all right, I'll give you 1 week, but just 1 week and no excuses. I started home wishing that Ronald and Bernie were tied to a railroad track with a train coming. All I had at home, plus my allowance at the end of the week, added up to just 87 cents. I didn't know where I was going to get the other $2.89, but I had to get it because there is a way my father has of saying one more thing, which really means one more thing. I wish I never heard of the detective business. Oh my goodness. Let me see. Do I have time for more chapter? It's cute though. It's cute. Once you look at it, it's cute. It's cute. I'm pushing it right now, but I'm finna hit y'all with the third chapter. Y'all gonna be like, Tweez, if you wasn't pushing it, would we? No, you know what? Push it. Give us this third chapter. I know, right? Calm down. You know you want this. This my side book. So when YouTube start acting, I'll just go ahead and slide this to y'all. Okay. I was so depressed, I didn't hear Tom O'Brien until he called up with me and he said he'd been yelling at me for a block. Okay, this is a first client, chapter 3. Tim is an important person in Wakanda. He is the best sophomore basketball player at school and a quarterback on the high school football team. The only thing wrong with him is that he lets Polly Pervert order him around, which is peculiar since he can throw a disc 200 feet. Polly is my cousin who always has a lot of boys calling her on the telephone and hanging around her house, getting on my uncle's nerves. My uncle, who may not realize that Tim has the best backhand of any tennis player in town, is the only person I know who does not admire Tim. I personally heard him call Tim an idiot's idiot. But then the only good thing I ever heard him say about any of Polly's friends was that the more he saw of the voters of the future, the more faith he put in the motto, "In God we trust." I just heard that you have a bill to pay, said Tim. I got an idea. Do you want a job? What kind of job? I said. You want to be a detective, don't you? Said Tim. You think you're funny, I said. Starting home with my groceries. I was impressed enough without having to help Tim O'Brien, who could run a mile in 4 minutes and 5 seconds, talk about that creek burning. He kept telling me that I was on his level, but I wouldn't pay any attention until he said, "Andy, I'll tell you what the job is. Polly has a certain letter in her possession. You get it, and I'll pay you whatever you charge on a case is." This didn't sound like kidding. Whose letter is it? I said. It's mine. I wrote it to her. Then it's hers, isn't it? I said. Well, technically, said Tim. I'm not stealing for anyone, I said. It's against the law. But your cousin Polly is blackmailing me with the letter, said Tim. Now, what does the detective do when he's hired by someone who's being blackmailed? He gets the damaging evidence back, doesn't he? That's not stealing. What's your fee? $3, I said. But I don't want to drop. It sounds funny. Because remember, he gave him 40 cents. He was supposed to bring him the rest because he got to give him $4. The window cost $8. And it seemed like everything back then was cheap. We need these prices. We need these prices. I need these prices. For Pete's sakes, Annie, do you think I'll ask you to do anything really dishonest? Said Tim. Actually, Polly is the one who is breaking the law. I tell you, she's blackmailing me. I'm in a real jam, and you're practically my last hope. This put a new light on things. I'm not saying we'll take the case, I said, but how will Willie and I recognize this letter if we saw it? Polly is keeping it in a long blue envelope with no stamp on it, and with some writing in red lead pencil in the upper right-hand corner. I know because she has been waving at me across the study hall all day. Since you were her cousin, you could prowl around her house without attracting attention. The letter's probably in her school notebook. At least that's where she is keeping it today. You get it by Friday, and I'll pay you $3. Why is this so valuable? I said. Tim said I didn't need to know, but I said that Willie and I definitely could not take the case then. So he made me swear that we wouldn't tell. And then he told me this doll story. So, I got to tell y'all this doll story. He said that he always preferred Polly to all the other girls, and that he thought that she preferred him to all the other guys. Though he already known that the other guys all preferred Polly too, and that most of them thought she preferred them. Any more preferred, and I'm going to lose track of what's going on, I said. Okay, said Tim. And short, I thought Polly had a sincere regard for me. Anyone could see that you were the best athlete in town, I said. That's not what I mean, said Tim, but skip it. Anyway, last summer when I was at the lake with my family, I got a letter from her. And she had permission that she heard that I was dating Connie Smith, who was there at the lake too. Naturally, I was surprised. I should think so, I said. It surprised me to hear that Polly would bother to send such dumb, unnecessary news clear across the states. As far as I was concerned, Connie wasn't even there, so I wrote Polly that somebody was misinformed, and I threw a few items about Connie's personality and appearance, things which weren't true, but just to make sure that Polly hadn't gotten the wrong impression. It was unbelievable. Here was the best athlete in town, wasting his vacation writing untrue letters about one girl to another girl when he would have been swimming, and then saying he did it to keep somebody from getting the wrong impression. True. This is not answer the letter. So you didn't get it. I was a victim of the circumstance, said Tim. Anyway, a few days later, I happened to be sitting on Connie's porch when the mail came, and she got a letter from Polly. So Connie said, let's see what's happening at home. But then she read the letter to herself, looked embarrassed, and said, there's nothing much happening, and put the letter away. Doesn't anything happen in this story? I said. Right away, Connie's manner made me suspect that there was something in that letter that she was hiding from me. But she's such a good friend of Polly's that I couldn't get her to tell me what it is. So you was messing around with her friend? Yeah, I'm going to feel some type of way. I'm going to send my best friend a letter too. So you over there sleeping with the dude that I'm sleeping with. And you call yourself a friend. You useless friend. However, as time went by, I figured out from little things she started to say before she stopped herself that Polly makes fun of everybody, especially me, and that people were surprised that a person like me would let Polly pull the wool over his eyes. At first, I felt low, but Connie was always there to cheer me up. But wait a minute, but this is her best friend. So wait, if she pulling the wool over your eyes, she definitely pulling the wool over Connie's ass. Got her fooled like she got you fooled. Don't believe Connie and don't believe Polly. Who is it? Drop it down in the comments. Y'all knew that was coming. And I began to realize that she is well named Consistently, that is. So I started dating her after all. Because the guy admires a girl who's sincere. What's all this got to do with blackmail, I said. The letter about Connie being goofy, skirted, etc. Said Tim, I've forgotten it. Then last week, Polly phoned me and said if I don't take her to the fall mixer Friday night, she'll show Connie the letter. And naturally, Connie thinks I'll take her. I don't know what to do. Every time I try to reason with Connie, she quotes from that crazy letter. Is this the only way she can get to the dance? I said. All the guys would like to take Polly, said Tim. But she made a bet that I would take her instead of Connie to the dance. She's just interested in winning the bet. Annie, you try to get that letter. We reached my house. I thought about what would happen if I didn't pay Mr. Antino and he told my father that I broke the window. And then I thought about the creep Ronald Prior. I looked at Tim and he reminded me of GC in the rain. We'll take the case, I said. As I went to my house, I saw Polly, who lives next door to me, looking through the window at Tim and me. I've always liked Polly, and when she waved to me, I felt guilty. But then I remembered that she was a blackmailer. I was going to say that, wait, don't feel guilty for her. She over there blackmailing homie. I mean, I'm so confused, though. Like, it's like, all right, why you just don't explain to Connie? Why don't he just explain to Connie that at the time that he didn't know that he was going to end up liking her because he didn't know that he was going to end up spending time together and getting to know each other? Because that's all that was. The little communication needs to just be handled, you know? Little communication ain't going to hurt nobody. It's all good in the hood. Just talk. Open up them ears. Open up them eyes. Give a little communication. It's what's popping. Now, let's see if they might make me say forever with this video. Or if they let me just let it go. What do you think? They better not play me. You got me, YouTube? Now I'm wagging my finger in people's face.